Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Today we are going to discuss the techniques regarding the comprehension reading, attempting the questions in a comprehension, and the kind of techniques that are required to make a perfect Précis. This is a lecture relevant for BSc 4th year for Punjab University students, and this will be a lecture for 17th, 18th, 19th, and 21st December. So let's start with our lecture. In this lecture, we are going to discuss these four main points. The purpose of comprehension. Comprehension करने का आखिर मकसद क्या है आपके एग्जाम में. Number two, useful techniques to read and understand comprehension, the kind of techniques that are required when you are reading a comprehension and when you are trying to understand it. Number three, useful guide to answering comprehension questions. So, in this lecture, the same lecture will address the kind of techniques to answer the questions that are there in a comprehension passage. Do's and don'ts of writing a perfect Précis. So, what is required to write a perfect Précis? So the first question here is, why do we need to develop comprehension skills? Why is it so necessary that we need to develop the comprehension? Why can't we just simply get away with learning things? The thing is that, of course, it is a very important component and part of your syllabus. बहुत आपके एग्जाम का एक सबसे इम्पोर्टेंट पार्ट होता है कॉम्प्रिहेंशन और प्रेसी राइटिंग. तो ऑफ कोर्स एग्जामिनेशन पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से भी ज़रूरी है, लेकिन उसके साथ इसलिए भी ज़रूरी है बिकॉज इट हेल्प्स यू फर्दर इन योर लाइफ. व्हाट आई मीन टू से इज दैट यू आर नॉट रिस्ट्रिक्टेड. अगर आप कोई बुक पढ़ना चाहें और अगर आपकी रीडिंग और कॉम्प्रिहेंशन अच्छी नहीं होगी तो फिर आप कोई भी किताब पढ़ लेंगे तो वो आपको समझ में नहीं आएगी. So, the purpose of this comprehension section in your syllabus is to make you a better reader. Comprehension means understanding. आप जो पढ़ें वो आपको समझ भी आए और आप एक इंडिपेंडेंट रीडर बन जाएं. यानी कि आप जो किताब पकड़ें आपके लिए लैंग्वेज का कोई प्रॉब्लम ना हो. Reading is an art, and reading to understand basically is an art. So, comprehension or developing an understanding whenever you are reading something is very necessary, because even if you will read something without understanding it, तो उसका कोई फायदा नहीं होगा. यानी कि आप कोई चीज़ पढ़ें, किताब पकड़ें, उसे पढ़ लें, लेकिन उसे पढ़ने का फायदा कोई नहीं. Because if you will not understand what is the meaning of the words given, what are the meanings of the words given in that specific book or the paragraph or essay or whatever you are reading, then the reading is a useless activity for you. So, developing comprehension through reading is essential because let me explain the meaning of this word comprehension to you. Comprehension means when you are able to comprehend something. Comprehend का मतलब understand करना, किसी चीज़ को समझना. आपके लिए किसी भी लैंग्वेज है, ऑफ कोर्स यू आर एक्सपोज टू टू लैंग्वेजेस एट द टाइम, इंग्लिश एंड उर्दू, एंड ऑफ कोर्स बिकॉज दिस इज comprehension related to the English, the course of English. So of course it is necessary for you to understand whatever you are reading in English language, that you are able to comprehend it and understand it. So, developing comprehension through reading is essential because number one, meaning of written text. ये एसेंशियल और ज़रूरी इसलिए है क्योंकि जो भी कुछ आपके सामने लिखा हुआ है उसका मीनिंग, उसमें राइटर ने क्या कहने की कोशिश की है, ये आपको बेहतर तरीके से समझ आना चाहिए। और ये तभी मुमकिन है कि जब आप अपनी रीडिंग की स्किल्स को अच्छा कर लेंगे और किसी भी रीडिंग के पैसेज को पढ़कर उसको अंडरस्टैंड करने की स्किल्स को होन कर लेंगे। होन मीन्स तेज करना, उसको डेवलप कर लेंगे। अंडरस्टैंडिंग व्हाट यू आर रीडिंग, लाइक आई सेड कि आप कोई भी किताब पकड़ें और उसके बाद आपसे पूछा जाए कि क्या आपको समझ आया, इसमें क्या कहा गया है, एंड देन यू आर अनएबल टू आंसर दैट क्वेश्चन, इट मीन्स दैट रीडिंग फॉर यू वाज अ यूजलेस एक्टिविटी। उसको पढ़ के आपको कोई फायदा हासिल नहीं हुआ। So, how does this skill helps you? It helps you in the development of knowledge, skills, and experiences to become enthusiastic readers. As human beings, it is in our nature, something that we don't understand, we don't happen to develop a liking for it. जो चीज़ हमें समझ में नहीं आती, हम उससे दूर भागते हैं। तो क्या ही अच्छा हो अगर हम प्रैक्टिस कर लें कि हम चीज़ को उल्टा उससे भागने की बजाय वी ट्राई टू गेट द बुल बाय द हॉर्न्स, मुसीबत को आंखों में आंखें डालकर फेस करें और रीडिंग का जो हमें मुश्किलात पेश आती हैं, हम उस स्किल को ही मास्टर कर लें कि जो हमें अच्छी रीडिंग के लिए हेल्प आउट कर सकती है। तो ये जो आपका एक एग्जामिनेशन का एक इम्पॉर्टेंट कंपोनेंट है, रीडिंग फॉर कॉम्प्रिहेंशन एंड प्रेसी डेवलपमेंट, इसको आप यूज कर सकते हैं अपने रीडिंग की स्किल्स को, फ्यूचर रीडिंग स्किल्स को डेवलप करने के लिए। So, reading makes you more knowledgeable, and then again you develop certain skills while reading कि आप बड़ी से बड़ी लिखी, मोटी से मोटी किताब भी आप चंद थोड़े ही अरसे में आप जिसको ख़त्म कर सकें. It means that you have become an experienced reader. And experiences, of course, book reading is a very pleasurable activity in itself. अगर आप किताब पढ़ते हैं तो आपको उसके साथ बहुत सारी और भी चीज़ें सीखने को मिलती हैं। ना सिर्फ आपके लैंग्वेज इम्प्रूव होती है, बल्कि आपके नॉलेज में भी इजाफा होता है। तो ज़रूरी नहीं है आप कोई कोर्स की बुक भी पढ़ें। इनफॉर्मल तरीके से पढ़ी हुई किताब भी आपके कोर्स और आपके सिलेबस में आपकी हेल्प कर सकती है। और कुछ नहीं तो रीडिंग एनी इंग्लिश बुक विल इम्प्रूव योर रीडिंग skills for English. So it makes a person an independent reader. Of course, जब आप independent होना तो सबसे अच्छी बात है. When you do not need anyone, you will then not need a teacher or a dictionary or anything else. You will not be able to rely on anyone. जब आपकी रीडिंग अच्छी हो जाती है तो आप इंडिपेंडेंट रीडर हो जाते हैं. बहुत सारी आप चेन्स तोड़ देते हैं और आप उस सारी जो कैद होती है उसमें से आप निकल के आप बाहर आ जाते हैं. It means that the world of books unlocks to you and you are able to familiarize yourself with whatever is written in the books. So what is a comprehension section in your exam? So in a 100 marks paper, the 15 marks are allocated for the comprehension, passage and Précis in total. So let me first read the first point for you. A paragraph, usually an unseen extract from a book, novel or short story. ऐसा होता है कि एग्जाम में आपको एक पैराग्राफ आ सकता है और वो किसी भी लेंथ का हो सकता है. वो छोटे ही लेंथ का भी हो सकता है और बड़ा भी हो सकता है. तो ये एक unseen extract होगा. It can be from any area. It can be from the area of science. It can be from the area of history. It can be related to any field. किसी नॉवल का हिस्सा भी हो सकता है, ठीक है, कोई और किसी शॉर्ट स्टोरी का हिस्सा भी हो सकता है. Now, one thing that should be clear to you in your mind that it will do not expect a very easy paragraph. It means कि थोड़ा सा twisted thinking, थोड़ा सा गोल मोल करके ज़्यादा दिमाग लड़ाने की कोशिश करने वाला इस तरह का पैराग्राफ हो सकता है. So difficulty level, of course, आप BSc हैं तो difficulty level आप वही expect करें जो यूनिवर्सिटी के लेवल पर हो सकता है. But you don't have to worry about that. Why? Because when you will get to practice this skill, जितनी ज़्यादा आप reading करती रहेंगी, even till the final day of your examination, उतना ज़्यादा you will be able to understand कि exactly pattern क्या है. And for that, it is a good idea to solve the unsolved papers of the past 10 years. उससे आपको ये पता चल जाएगा कि किस स्टाइल के normally paragraphs आते हैं. नंबर 2, रीड द टेक्स्ट एंड आंसर द क्वेश्चंस. ये तो एक बड़ा नॉर्मल सा प्रैक्टिस है. आगे जाकर हम डिस्कस करेंगे कि इसमें से हमने कौन सी चीज़ पहले करनी है और कौन सी बाद में करनी है. तो मैं इस पॉइंट को भी यहीं छोड़ती हूँ, आगे जाकर एक्सप्लेन करूंगी. नंबर 3, 15 मार्क्स question of comprehension passage and Précis writing. So you are basically given a comprehension paragraph in which several questions are asked about the passage, and one question necessarily is of Précis writing. यानी कि 2 से 3 क्वेश्चंस हो सकते हैं, ज़्यादा भी हो सकते हैं, लेकिन 9 मार्क्स हमेशा Précis के लिए एलोकेटेड होते हैं. 9 मार्क्स फॉर Précis, जिसमें से 2 मार्क्स हमेशा आपके टाइटल के होते हैं. Yes, you have to give a suitable title to the Précis that you will make. And the 7 marks for Précis, जो आपका Précis का आप एक छोटा सा पैराग्राफ बना देते हैं, उसके 7 marks होते हैं. So these are quite substantial marks. You cannot afford to lose these marks. और जो क्वेश्चन आंसर हैं वो भी मार्क्स आप लूज करना अफोर्ड नहीं कर सकते. ऑफ कोर्स यू हैव टू फाइट फॉर एवरी सिंगल मार्क इन योर एग्जाम. Remaining marks are allocated for the other questions. Sometimes questions about giving meanings for difficult words from the passage are also given. So it so happens that in the given paragraph there are some words and you have to basically give the meanings for these words. Words दिए होते हैं, ये paragraph में से ही होते हैं और आपसे पूछा जाता है कि इनका meaning क्या है. अब उसके लिए आपको जो कॉन्टेक्स्ट है और थोड़ा सा आपको नॉलेज है, नॉलेज तो ऑफ कोर्स आपको अपना बढ़ाना पड़ेगा, और उसके साथ जो कॉन्टेक्स्ट है उसकी अंडरस्टैंडिंग भी आपको होनी चाहिए. अगर आपको कॉन्टेक्स्ट की अंडरस्टैंडिंग नहीं होगी तो फिर आप इन वर्ड्स के मीनिंग्स भी नहीं दे पाएंगे. So now we are going to discuss some useful techniques of reading for comprehension. So whenever you are trying to practice for your examination, so the best tip is number 1, to stop when you get confused and try to summarize what you just read. So imagine that you are going through a passage and it happens, it is quite normal that while reading a passage, you lose the thought sometimes. कभी कभी दिमाग इधर उधर चला जाता है और कोई passage पढ़ते हुए अक्सर आप जो है कई बार कॉम्प्लिकेटेड सेंटेंस स्ट्रक्चर आ जाता है तो उसकी मीनिंग को आप अंडरस्टैंड नहीं कर पाते. तो उसके लिए इट इज़ बेटर टू स्टॉप व्हेन यू गेट कंफ्यूज्ड एंड ट्राई टू समराइज व्हाट यू जस्ट रेड. अब उसी वक्त ज़रूरी नहीं आप समरी करने बैठ जाएं, but just try to think about the lines, whatever lines are given there. Tip number 2, if you are struggling, try reading aloud. Now, this can be done when you are alone and not sitting in an examination hall, but of course, if you are in an examination hall, then you cannot read aloud. But still, you can simply concentrate on whatever you are trying to read. Tip number 3, reread or skim previous sections of the text. Now skimming is also a technique जिसके अंदर हर लफ्ज को गौर से पढ़े बगैर आप briefly थोड़ा सा जल्दी जल्दी पैराग्राफ को पढ़ने की कोशिश करते हैं, just to try to understand whatever is being said in that paragraph. Tip number 4, skim or read upcoming sections of the text. So sometimes it happens that in your examination you are given more than one paragraph for Précis writing, for comprehension and Précis. 2 भी दिए हो सकते हैं, 3 भी दिए हो सकते हैं. तो होते वो एक ही टॉपिक से रिलेटेड है पर उसी का ही मुख्तलिफ पार्ट होते हैं. सो यू कैन जस्ट read the initial lines of the paragraphs given just to have an idea what the whole piece of writing is about. Tip number 5 is to discuss the text with a friend or an imaginary friend in examination hall. Of course, you cannot discuss the text with your friend in the examination hall. ऐसा करने की बिल्कुल कोशिश मत करें because you might be caught in a case of cheating. हाँ, प्रैक्टिस के दौरान आप अपने फ्रेंड के साथ डिस्कस कर सकते हैं. In fact, if you do a group study, then you learn more. डिस्कशन से आप ज़्यादा सीखते हैं as compared to individual study. So if you are sitting in an examination hall, then you can talk to yourself. मतलब अपने जहन में बात करके खुद से जो है उस पैराग्राफ को समझने की कोशिश कर सकते हैं. So now we are going to discuss the stepwise technique on how to answer the comprehension questions. Basically, we are going to discuss how you should proceed with the answering of the questions. So step number 1 says read the questions. Now most of the times I tell my students to put the cart before the horse. मतलब ये कि पहले आप questions पढ़ें. पैराग्राफ पढ़ने से पहले भी आप क्वेश्चंस पढ़ें. वजह यह है कि जब आप क्वेश्चंस पढ़ते हैं तो कई बार क्वेश्चंस पढ़ के आपको पता चल जाता है कि पैराग्राफ किस बारे में है. उसके बाद क्वेश्चंस ऑफ कोर्स आपसे जिस तरीके से पूछे जाते हैं यू कैन सर्च थ्रू द रेलेवेंट सेक्शन. पहले फिर नंबर 1 स्टेप यही होगा कि फर्स्ट यू रीड द क्वेश्चन. उसके बाद आप स्किमिंग करें टेक्स्ट से or try to find the answers to the questions. Step number 2 is unpack the question. Now by this unpacking it is meant कि आपसे question के अंदर जो पूछा जा रहा है वो समझने की कोशिश करें. What is actually being asked? ऐसा भी हो सकता है कि आपको जो रीडिंग पैसेज दिया हुआ हो उसमें कोई इंफॉर्मेशन बहुत क्लियरली आपके सामने मौजूद ना हो. Now this can happen that sometimes some of the information is given correctly whereas sometimes it is given in the unexpected ways, in the hidden ways. कई बार एक चीज़ का ना कहना दूसरी चीज़ की affirmation होता है, यानी कि एक चीज़ का denial दूसरी चीज़ को confirm करता है और एक चीज़ की confirmation दूसरी चीज़ को deny करती है. सो आपसे जो वो चीज़ नहीं कही गई है लेकिन जिसका ऑपोजिट पैसेज में मौजूद है तो आपसे उस तरह का क्वेश्चन भी आ सकता है. ये हम आगे जाके डिस्कस करेंगे इन द टाइप्स ऑफ क्वेश्चंस. स्टेप नंबर 3 इज रीड द टेक्स्ट. So you can see that the technique is in the reverse here. First read the questions. First try to unpack the question. It means that what is being asked in the question. Questions such as WH questions, what, why, where, when, and sometimes the how question. So pay attention to these words. What, why, where, when, how. सो हाउ वाला जो क्वेश्चन है एक्सप्लेन डिस्क्राइब ये वर्ड्स जो हैं ध्यान देने वाले हैं. व्हेन यू पे अटेंशन टू सच वर्ड्स then you will be able to understand that what is actually being asked from you in that specific question. Step number 3 is then to read the text afterwards. So this means that first you have to read the questions, you have to try to understand the questions and then read the text. उसके अंदर पहले skimming करें और फिर बाद में ध्यान से उस text को पढ़ें, उस passage को पढ़ें जो आपको दिया गया है. Step number 4, read for relevant information and techniques. This is known as the targeted reading. यानी कि आपको question दिया गया है and you are searching for the answer to that specific question. So after reading the question and after reading the text, while you will be reading the text, try to find the answer to that specific question that has been asked. Targeted reading करें यानी कि उसी सवाल का जवाब ढूंढने की कोशिश करें. So step number 5 is answer the questions, written responses. Now, if by the end of this lecture, I am going to show you a sample question for the BSc paper, this comprehension question. So, in the questions that are asked usually in the comprehension passages, they are basically the written responses. यानी कि आपसे detailed written responses मांगे जाते हैं. कभी कुछ examinations ऐसे होते हैं जिनमें MCQs होते हैं, but they are not relevant to you. For BSc, they ask you to write a proper answer to a question. So, how do you have to do that? Identify and restate the keywords in question. So this is very important. आपसे क्वेश्चन में जो पूछा जा रहा है, आप उसके क्वेश्चन के जो कीवर्ड्स हैं वो भी उठाकर अपने आंसर में यूज कर सकते हैं. एंड देन present your answer. Present your answer means, of course, write your answer and do not write it just like that. मतलब एक लाइन में जो है वो हो गया. Pay attention to the marks. 2 marks के क्वेश्चन में थोड़ी सी explanation चाहिए होती है. So you should explain your answer but not in a very explicit way. यानी कि बहुत खुल के आपने उसका जवाब नहीं देना. जितना उसका to the point, precise, comprehensive जवाब बनता है, आपने उसका वो आंसर करना है. Your answer should be to the point, precise, comprehensive, and it should not violate whatever is written in the passage. You should not write something that is not there in the passage. Do not use any evidence outside the text and then conclude your response. So even the answers that you will give for each and every question, your answers should be a complete whole. यानी कि आपके जो आंसर्स हैं वो अपने आप में पूरे के पूरे कंप्लीट होल होने चाहिए. उनके अंदर किसी किस्म की कोई भी कमी नहीं होनी चाहिए. So now we have come to the point where we need to recognize the question types. There are different types of questions that can be asked from you. कुछ आपसे कहेंगे explain, कुछ कहेंगे describe, कुछ पूछेंगे what, कुछ पूछेंगे when, कुछ ऐसे questions होंगे जिसका जवाब clearly passage में मौजूद नहीं होगा. So let's look at these questions. So the types of questions can be, number one, main point questions. Main point questions ask you to identify the main point. Consider the answers and then check the first and last paragraphs to find the point. In this case, not the first and the last paragraph. अगर एक paragraph दिया हुआ है, in case if only one paragraph is given, you can pay attention to the beginning, middle and end of that specific paragraph. If more than one paragraph is given, for example, 2 or 3 paragraphs, then you will have to search for the main theme or that one idea around which the all 3 paragraphs will revolve. यानी कि सारे के सारे पैराग्राफ किसी एक चीज के बारे में इंफॉर्मेशन दे रहे होंगे और वो क्या इंफॉर्मेशन होगी. इंफॉर्मेशन क्लियर कट नहीं होगी. जस्ट बी रेडी फॉर दैट. They will not give you a clear cut information about something. You will have to find it out. ये कोई भी चीज हो सकती है. Sometimes a paragraph can be very simple. For example, it can be about some kind of scientific process. It can be about television. It can be about drugs. But in some other cases, it can be about some kind of philosophical idea. कोई आइडिया हो सकता है, कोई सोच हो सकती है, कोई लॉजिक हो सकती है, कोई भी पॉइंट हो सकता है. सो यू विल हैव टू बी वेरी विजिलेंट. आपको ये जो कॉम्प्रिहेंशन आपको एक्सरसाइज करनी है, बहुत एक्टिव होकर अपने दिमाग को हाजिर रखकर, बहुत विजिलेंट होकर आपको ये एक्सरसाइज करनी है, देखनी है. मेन पॉइंट क्वेश्चंस बेसिकली it is basically a jackpot point for you if you are able to find the main point in the paragraphs that are given. Number two, vocabulary questions. So mostly you do get the words for which you have to provide a meaning. So vocabulary questions ask about the meaning of specific words. Find the word in the text and use context clues to guess the meaning. So sometimes it happens that one word has a simple meaning, but in the context, sometimes its meaning changes. So you have to give a meaning according to the context in which it occurs. And if, for example, you do not know the meaning of that word, then try to find the meaning of it through the ideas that are given there. कई बार ऐसा होता है कि उससे पहले या उस लफ्ज़ के फौरन बाद आने वाला लफ्ज़ ही उसका मीनिंग होता है, या फिर वो एक्सप्लेन कर देता है कि असल में इस वर्ड का मीनिंग क्या है। लेकिन मेन बात यह है कि आप उस कॉन्टेक्स्ट की तरफ ध्यान दें जिसमें वो वर्ड आ रहा है। Replace the word with answers to see which makes the most sense. Remember that a strict dictionary definition of the term may not match the way the term is being used in the reading example. So, like I told you a few moments ago, that sometimes a dictionary gives one meaning of a certain word, but in a specific context, the meaning slightly changes. Evidence questions. Evidence questions ask you to find facts, statistics, examples, quotations, or other details that support a specific point. Return to the part of the reading that made that point and find the evidence used. आपसे हो सकता है पूछा जाए कि क्या evidence, for example, what evidence has been given by the writer to support the claims. ठीक है, इस तरह का कोई क्वेश्चन आए, सो यू हैव टू फाइंड द स्पेसिफिक एग्जाम्पल और फैक्ट फॉर दैट। अब फैक्ट्स के नंबर, स्टेटिस्टिक्स का मतलब है नंबर फिगर, आप वो चेंज नहीं कर सकते। यू कैन नॉट चेंज द फैक्ट, यू कैन नॉट चेंज द स्टेटिस्टिक, द नंबर फिगर। And as far as the examples are concerned, you cannot change that, but you have to always present it in an indirect narrative form. यानी कि अपने words में using the economy of the words and using the easiest possible words, you have to give the evidence. Inference questions. Now, these were the questions that I was talking about. Inference questions ask you to draw conclusions based on evidence. If you are asked to infer, do not select answers that are literally expressed. बहुत जो चीज़ खुल के बयान की गई होती है, सवाल पूछा जाता है, if A is equal to B and B is equal to C, then what is C? तो पैसेज में हो सकता है क्लियरली सी की वैल्यू ना दी गई हो। इफ यू आर ट्राइंग टू फॉलो माई पॉइंट, द पैसेज माइट नॉट गिव यू एग्जैक्टली द वैल्यू ऑफ सी, बट यू कैन इन्फर, आप उसमें से डिड्यूस कर सकते हैं, आप उसमें से थोड़ा सा इंट्यूटिवली आप कह सकते हैं, अगर a इज इक्वल टू बी दिया है, b इज इक्वल टू सी दिया है, तो c की वैल्यू जो है वो ए बी हो सकती है। So that is the kind of inference that you can make from whatever information is given in the paragraph. Instead select those that are unstated in the reading but are supported by evidence. लेकिन evidence दिया गया हो दाएं बाएं, लेकिन खुल के बयान ना किया गया हो। ऐसे क्वेश्चंस के मामले में अक्सर आपको थोड़ा सा एफर्ट करना पड़ता है। क्लियरली इसका जवाब पैसेज में मौजूद नहीं होता, थोड़ी एफर्ट करनी पड़ती है, एंड यू हैव टू जज थ्रू द इंफॉर्मेशन दैट इज गिवन देयर। Style questions. Style questions ask you about the specific way that the author expresses ideas. Think about the communication situation with the writer as the sender of the message. What features of language give you clues as to who the writer is, and what attitudes the writer has toward all aspects of the communication situation? Style question means if the writer has stated something in a very sarcastic way, कहना कुछ और चाह रहा है, कुछ और कह रहा है ironical way, या फिर जो है ना वो humorous way, या फिर funny है, humorous है, sad है, ironical है. We have already discussed irony in our lectures. और उसके बाद sarcasm means using very pinching and bitter words and stating some kind of reality या फिर उसने बड़े साइंटिफिक तरीके से, यानी कि स्टेटिस्टिक्स, नंबर्स और एग्जांपल्स देकर उसने किसी चीज़ को क्लियर किया है. सो दिस इज द काइंड ऑफ स्टाइल दैट दे माइट आस्क यू अबाउट. इस तरह के क्वेश्चंस भी आ जाया करते हैं, और अगर आए तो फिर आप सिंपली पैसेज पढ़ने से अंदाज़ा लगा सकते हैं कि उसने एक बहुत बड़ी चीज़ को जो है ना बड़ा छोटा सा करके बता दिया है, छोटी सी चीज़ को एग्जैजरेट कर दिया है. So now we are going to discuss Précis writing. We are done with the techniques to answer the techniques to answer the questions in a comprehension passage. So now we are going to discuss that specific question in a comprehension passage, that is the art of Précis writing. And Précis has to be made out of the passage that will be given to you in the examination. So let us first discuss that what exactly is a précis. A précis is a way of summarizing in which the tone, proportions, and meaning of the original text are maintained. Now I will stop here and explain to you tone, proportions, and meaning. किस अंदाज से राइटर ने बात की है, कितना उसने किसी चीज़ को वजन दिया है, कितनी इम्पोर्टेंस दी है, किसको नहीं दी, और उसका कहने का आखिर मतलब क्या है. सो बेसिकली यू डू नॉट चेंज एनी ऑफ दैट इन द ओरिजिनल टेक्स्ट. योर ओनली टास्क इज to shorten to shorten the length of the paragraph that has been given to you. To shorten the length of the paragraph that has been given to you. कैसे? By omitting the unnecessary details, by omitting the unnecessary examples, by omitting the repetition of the ideas. वो आपने omit करके फिर अपने words में with the economy of words. When I say the economy of words, it means कम से कम अल्फाज इस्तेमाल कर कर ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा concentrated meaning वाला एक summary produce करना. That is basically a précis. So précis जो है आपके जो ओरिजिनल टेक्स्ट होता है उसके अंदर उसके मीनिंग में, उसके आइडियाज में, उसकी जो अंदाज है उसमें कोई भी चेंज लेकर नहीं आती. A précis summarizes the reading that you have completed. So, in the examination, you are given a passage which you have to summarize. The length of a précis can vary greatly. It is approximately one third of the length of the original reading. So जो भी passage आपको दिया जाता है, whatever kind of passage that you are given in the examination for the comprehension and for the Précis, you have to exactly do the one third length of Précis for that. Précis is derived from the word precise, meaning exact or to the point. So you should be very clear about the meaning of Précis, that Précis is derived from the word precise. Precise का मतलब होता है बहुत exact, to the point, बड़ा apt, और जिससे ज़्यादा कोई बात ना कही जा सकती है और जिससे कोई कम बात भी नहीं की जा सकती है. So let's discuss the rules of making a précis. A well-written précis should be a serviceable substitute for the original work. The goal of a précis is to preserve the core essence of the work in a manner that is both clear and concise. While writing a précis, the writer should follow the below given rules to make it an effective piece of work. So précis का सबसे बड़ा गोल यही है that you have to preserve the original वैल्यू ऑफ द गिवन पैसेज. उसके अंदर से उसका मीनिंग, उसकी टोन, उसके कोई भी जो मैसेज कन्वे करना चाह रहा है वो पैसेज, वो चेंज नहीं होना चाहिए. So number one rule is to read carefully. First, read the passage twice or thrice carefully to summarize it. This will enable you to understand the main theme of the passage. Even reading the passage twice is enough, because in the examination you have a very short time. If you are able to manage time, practice your timing. That is the plus point you will have. As far as my opinion is concerned, if you do the Précis or an essay at the end of a paper, you will be able to give it much more time. अगर शुरू में आप time देते हैं, you might not be able to give a lot of time to the rest of the paper. So it is a good idea to give at least 40 minutes to the question of Précis. Underlining. Underline and mark the important ideas and essential points from the original text. So it is always a good idea to carry a pencil with you whenever you go to the examination hall, because if you will be sitting with a pencil in your hand, you will be able to underline the important ideas. Sometimes it so happens that while reading, you think that every idea is important. So for that, the best solution is to read the passage without those lines which you have not underlined, and only read the sentences which you have underlined. अगर तब भी जो है आपका passage एक clear meaning convey कर रहा है, it means that whatever you have underlined is important. But if some important information is left, it means that whatever you have underlined is not that important. Outline. With the help of underlined ideas, draw the outline of your Précis. Outlining is a must. Even if you are writing an essay or a Précis, outline is a must. Outline helps you a lot. It is just like if you want to paint a picture, you first have to draw a sketch. So, outline is also basically a sketch in the picture of drawing a Précis. Omission. Omit all the unnecessary information or the long phrases which could be replaced by one word. We all know that whenever something is written, we add some extra words, or we use more words just to explain a very simple thing. ऐसा इसलिए किया जाता है because something that is more verbose, according to some writers, if it has more words, ज़्यादा difficult vocabulary होती है, ज़्यादा complicated तरीके से simple बात की जाए, so it adds to the beauty of the paragraph. So what you have to do is कि दिस इज अ सॉर्ट ऑफ डिकोडिंग. आपको उस सिंपल आइडिया जो कि मुश्किल अल्फाज में एक्सप्लेन किया गया है, उस सिंपल आइडिया को बाहर निकालना है और उसे इजी वर्ड्स में, कम से कम वर्ड्स में आपने उसे प्रेसी में मेंशन करना है. All the adjectives and the adverbs can also be omitted in order to make a good Précis. So, adjectives basically, of course, they give us more information about a noun, but in case of Précis, they are all extra. तो आप simply adjectives और adverbs को remove कर सकते हैं. So another rule is don't omit. While making a Précis, the writer should never omit the important point and ideas which are essential to be described. यहाँ पर students अक्सर सवाल करते हैं कि पर हमें पता कैसे चले कि कौन सा important point है. तो वो मैंने पिछली स्लाइड में आपको बताया कि जो points आप underline करें, उनके साथ आप सिर्फ और सिर्फ उन्हीं points को आप पढ़ें और फिर अपने जहन में ये सोचें कि क्या ये वो मीनिंग कन्वे कर रहा है जो आपको पैराग्राफ कन्वे करना चाह रहा है. अगर ऐसा ही है तो इट मीन्स दैट यू हैव फाउंड द इम्पोर्टेंट पॉइंट्स. अगर ऐसा नहीं है, इट मीन्स दैट समथिंग इज लैकिंग एंड ट्राई टू रिव्यू whatever you have underlined. Size. Keep the fact in your mind that the length of the Précis should be 1/3 of the original passage. So size बहुत ज़्यादा मैटर करता है Précis का. A Précis should always be the 1/3 of the original passage. Indirect speech. A Précis should be written in indirect speech. If there is direct speech in the passage, it should be changed into indirect speech. By the direct speech, it is meant the exact dialogues. Normally narrative आपको paragraphs नहीं आते exam में, but if sometimes you do happen to get the narrative paragraphs, यानी कि आपको direct speech dialogues के साथ कोई paragraph आ जाता है, तो you should first convert them into the indirect speech, यानी कि inverted commas के बगैर proper rules follow करते हुए और कम से कम words use करते हुए उसे indirect speech में convert करें. Tense and person. Précis should be written in the third person and past tense. In case of the universal truth, the present tense should be used. So this should be quite clear to you. Grammatically भी अगर आप किसी और की लिखी हुई कोई चीज़ रिपोर्ट कर रहे हैं, specifically in case of Précis, then you should use third person. Now third person is he, she, it, or name, or they. So basically that is the third person. And the past tense, it can be any past tense. Sometimes it is the past simple tense or the past perfect tense, most commonly. So in case of the universal truth, for example, the sun rises in the east, you will write this as it is, the sun rises in the east. Universal truth के मामले में tense change नहीं होता. Own words. A précis should be written in your own words, and the writer should abstain from borrowing words from the original passage unless necessary. So, this is basically the most important skill that you need to have while writing a précis. A précis should necessarily be written in your own words. आप कोई भी word passage से नहीं उठा सकते unless necessary. So, by the necessary, what I mean is there are sometimes some words which cannot be substituted. For example, if you will not call a television, then what else will you call it? Based on the technology, you can call it LCD or LED, but still you will have to write a TV with it. So some words can be substituted and some words cannot be substituted. Précis of a dialogue. The précis of a dialogue or conversation should always be expressed in form of narrative. What I always tell my students is not to include the information from any kind of dialogue in the passage unless it is adding to the overall meaning of the paragraph. यानी कि अगर किसी कैरेक्टर के डायलॉग्स दिए गए हैं लेकिन जो डायलॉग्स हैं अगर आपके पैसेज के इम्पोर्टेंट मैसेज से बहुत ज़्यादा लिंक नहीं है तो आप बेशक उन डायलॉग्स और कॉन्वर्सेशन का रेफरेंस ना दें. ठीक है, वो आपको नैरेटिव में एक्सप्रेस करने की ज़रूरत नहीं है. बेसिकली प्रेसी का मकसद ये है कि पैराग्राफ डायरेक्टली क्या मीनिंग कन्वे करने की कोशिश कर रहा है और उसमें इम्पोर्टेंट जो मेन आइडिया है उससे रिलेटेड क्या क्या बात की गई है सिर्फ वो पॉइंट शामिल करना ज़रूरी है. So one should always have an objective approach when one is making a précis. A précis writer should adopt an objective approach. He should not add his personal ideas to a précis, but or put all the important points and ideas in a logical order. So by the objective approach, हम objective approach पर काफ़ी बात कर चुके हैं, especially when we discuss the place of science in liberal education by Bertrand Russell. So, by the objective approach, it is meant a very scientific approach. It means that the things that are presented, they should be presented the way they are in a précis too. जैसी चीज, जैसे facts और जिस order में आपके excuse me जो भी आइडियाज जिस भी ऑर्डर में आपके पैराग्राफ में आ रहे हैं आप उसका ऑर्डर चेंज नहीं करेंगे. आप उसको एज इट इज़ उसी ऑर्डर में रखेंगे और जो फैक्ट्स जैसे दिए गए हैं उनको वैसे ही प्रेजेंट करेंगे. आप अपने कोई पर्सनल आइडियाज ओपिनियंस उसमें आप नहीं दे सकते. One paragraph. There could be two or more paragraphs in the original text. While making the précis, try to write all the ideas in one paragraph. सो एक ही पैराग्राफ में कोशिश करें कि आप अपनी प्रेसी को लिखें. वैसे भी वो इतने कम वर्ड्स हो जाते हैं कि उसके लिए आपको ज़्यादा पैराग्राफ बनाने की ज़रूरत नहीं पड़ती है. Even if the original text has more than one paragraph, still your précis should be in one paragraph. Rough draft. So after going through all of these steps, you should make a rough draft of the précis. The underline points when you convert them in your own words, and after omitting all the unnecessary ideas and the examples and the dialogues and whatever is unnecessary, which is not directly related to the main idea, after doing all of that, you should prepare a rough draft to finalize your précis. It it means that you should write it roughly. Now, you can do this in the examination, you can do this at the back of your answer sheet. You can simply title rough draft and do it with a pencil, and later you can just cut it off. You can put a cross on it and write rough work, so the examiner will have the idea and will not award you any mark for it. So, final draft. Having read the rough draft and pointed out some mistakes which may be found in the rough draft, the writer can prepare the final draft. So, when you are writing the rough draft, just make sure to pay attention to each and every single detail. The spelling mistakes, the grammar mistakes, whatever that you come across, you should pay attention to in the rough draft. So, what is a good Précis? A good Précis shows the writing skills of a person. It must have the following qualities. Number one, clarity. Clarity means getting your message across so that the receiver can understand what the writer is trying to convey. It is the basic and essential need of a Précis. The ideas should be clear and understandable. There should not be any ambiguity in your writing. The writer can achieve clarity by using simple language and simple structure. If your Précis is not understandable to the reader, it will lose its importance and meanings for the reader. So it is quite essential that whatever Précis that you are writing, it should clearly convey the message, and the message should be the same that is given in the original passage. And for that, the language should be simple. Sentence structures that you will use should also be simple. Just remember that the longer and more complicated sentence structures give rise to more mistakes, more grammatical mistakes, and more spelling errors. So, if you want to avoid and if you think that you are not quite good at grammar, if your spellings are not that good, so try to write the smaller sentence structures and try to use a simple language. Remember that you are not going to be awarded for using a very complicated vocabulary. Whatever they are testing you here is regarding the simplicity of the structure, the simplicity of the language, and how well your Précis is communicating whatever is mentioned in the original passage. Number two is correctness. Mistakes in your writings always irritate the reader. Of course, mistakes are never intentional. Even so, there is no excuse for them. At the time of writing or composing a Précis, the writer must ensure that the facts and figures are correct. Structure of sentences and spelling of words must be correct because a single mistake in structure and spelling may spoil the message. We may consider the mistakes under the following headings: misspelled words, mistakes in figures and dates, mistakes in punctuation, mistakes of grammar and structure. So, words, figures, and dates, punctuation, grammar, and structure, all these should be perfect or at least near perfect. You should try your best to practice and read as much as possible. If you have any wrong spelling, then better practice them at home while you are sitting in the comfort of your home. Try to write the same word 5 to 8 or 10 times just to practice the spelling. As far as the grammatical structures are concerned, you can practice them by writing something on your own and getting them checked. So, this will help you in your Précis writing. Remember that whatever mistake that you will make regarding grammar, spelling, punctuation, it is going to cost you big time, which means that the examiner will deduct a lot of marks and you will not be left with any mark for your question. So we have already discussed the point of objectivity. Objectivity means the ability to present or view facts uncolored by feelings, opinions, and personal bias. While making a Précis, the writer should adopt an objective approach. He should not give and add his personal opinion and ideas in a Précis. A Précis should be purely a summary of the original text without any addition. So this is the point that is being repeated again and again. So you can guess the importance of this point कि आपको अपनी ऑब्जेक्टिविटी मेंटेन रखनी है, अपने पर्सनल आइडियाज़ जो हैं उस प्रेसी से बाहर रखने हैं, और आपको कोशिश करनी है कि किसी भी सूरत अपना कोई भी पर्सनल आइडिया बीच में ऐड ना करें। वजह यह है कि आपको सिर्फ और सिर्फ राइटर के दिए गए आइडियाज़ की समरी करनी है, आपसे आपका ओपिनियन नहीं पूछा जा रहा है। इसका मतलब क्या है? That there is a difference between Précis and essay. In an essay, you can write your own opinion. Excuse me. You can give your own opinion, you can give your own ideas, but in a Précis, you cannot do anything like that. You have to be very mechanical as far as Précis is concerned. You have to give a Précis as a summary of the original text. Number 4, coherence. Coherence means the logical and clear interconnection of ideas in a written piece of work. A good précis should be coherent. The ideas which are presented in a précis must have a logical connection and they all should be interrelated. In short, we may say that the ideas should be well knitted so that the writer may not be confused and loses interest. Now, this is the main point. Coherence का मतलब ideas एक logical order में हो. Whatever ideas are given in the passage, you should pay attention to the order in which they occur and try to follow the same order. Now imagine you have been given a paragraph where they are telling you how to construct a building. अब अगर हाउ टू कंस्ट्रक्ट अ बिल्डिंग से रिलेटेड पैराग्राफ आया है तो वो आपको इस बात से लेकर चलेगा कि पहले साइट का विजिट करना है, आर्किटेक्ट से प्लान अप्रूव करवाना है, उसके बाद उसकी बुनियादें यानी कि फाउंडेशंस होंगी, और फिर उसके बाद उनमें कंक्रीट होगा और ये सब स्टेप्स होंगे। सो आपको वही स्टेप्स फॉलो करने हैं। So, उसमें डिफरेंस सिर्फ ये है that you have to present these steps in your own words. But do not lose track of the number of steps or the order of steps that are given by the writer. इससे आपको फायदा ये होगा कि आपकी कोहेरेंस में प्रॉब्लम नहीं आएगा। अगर आप खुद से दिमाग लड़ा कर ये कहें कि मैं ये आइडिया पहले कर लूँ बाद में कर लूँ, तो हो सकता है एक तो आपका कोई बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट आइडिया बीच में से मिस हो जाए, दूसरा ये है कि हो सकता है कि कोहेरेंस जो है वो वहाँ पर ख़राब हो जाए। सो कोहेरेंस मीन्स कि एक लॉजिकल ऑर्डर हो, यानी कि ए के बाद बी आए और बी के बाद सी आए। ऐसा ना हो ए के बाद एफ आ जाए और एफ के बाद जो है वो Z आ जाए. So you should follow that order, the same order that is given in the original passage. Another striking feature of a good Précis is completeness. A Précis should be complete in all respects. Completeness means that the writer should include all the important facts in a Précis. To make it short, one should not omit the important ideas. This mistake on the part of the writer will spoil the importance and meaning of the Précis. So जितना complete आपको वो पैराग्राफ लग रहा है उतना ही complete आपकी प्रेसी भी होनी चाहिए। आपको कोशिश करनी चाहिए कोई भी ऐसा पॉइंट आप मिस ना करें जो कि पैराग्राफ में दिया गया हो, और उसी तरीके से ही आपकी प्रेसी कंप्लीट लगेगी। यानी कि कंप्लीटनेस उसके अंदर जो है वो करेक्ट ग्रामर, करेक्ट स्पेलिंग, करेक्ट प्रोनाउंसिएशन और करेक्ट कोहेरेंस ऑफ द आइडियाज़ और नॉट मिसिंग आउट ऑन एनी इम्पोर्टेंट पॉइंट, ये तमाम चीज़ें मिलकर एक प्रेसी को कंप्लीट करती हैं। Conciseness. Conciseness is a desirable quality of a good précis. So precision and conciseness, ये दोनों चीज़ें साथ साथ चलती हैं। Précis of course means precise. Concise का मतलब बहुत छोटा, terse, यानी कि बहुत छोटा, unnecessarily छोटा नहीं, लेकिन जितना ज़्यादा छोटा लेकिन complete होगा उतना ज़्यादा आपके लिए बेहतर है। Conciseness means to say all that needs to be said and no more. The writer should write what is necessary and avoid writing unnecessary details. ऐसी प्रेसी बनानी चाहिए कि जिसको पढ़ के लगे इससे ज़्यादा की भी ज़रूरत नहीं और इससे कम पर भी ठीक नहीं रहना है। A concise piece of work conveys the message in the fewest possible words. But one point must be kept in mind that the writer should not omit some basic and essential facts to achieve conciseness. To achieve conciseness, notice the following suggestions: omitting unnecessary details, eliminate wordy expressions जहाँ बहुत लंबे लंबे expressions यूज किए गए हैं, आपको लग रहा है चार पांच लफ्ज जो मिलकर एक चीज को एक्सप्लेन कर रहे हैं, उसकी जगह अगर कोई एक वर्ड आ सकता है तो आप उस वर्ड को वहां लगा दें। इंक्लूड ओनली रेलिवेंट मटेरियल, मेन आइडिया से जो बाकी सब आइडियाज हैं वो इंटरकनेक्टेड होंगे तो उसको इंक्लूड करें, अदरवाइज डोंट इंक्लूड इट। अवॉइड unnecessary repetition. Sometimes it so happens in a paragraph that the same idea is repeated through different words. So try to analyze that and try to mention only the ideas, not the sentences that are given. So now we are going to discuss the do's and don'ts of Précis writing. First, let's discuss that what should be done for Précis writing. Start your Précis with the main idea so that the reader can quickly understand the essence of the Précis. So it is always a good idea to start your Précis with the main idea so that your examiner will be able to know that you have been able to find the main idea from the given passage. Number two, it is a good idea to underline the important points while reading the comprehension passage and make a rough draft. We have already discussed this in detail. Give equal space to all important points. So this is very important that whatever ideas are connected to the main idea, you should give an equal space to all the important points. Now it does not mean that you should start writing at length about the subsidiary ideas. Now there is always a main idea in a paragraph and there are always subsidiary ideas. So, if you are giving a space to a main idea and the subsidiary ideas, then equal space should be given to the subsidiary ideas. Now, by the subsidiary ideas, I mean the points that are supporting the main point. As a Précis is concise, compress it and make sure that the length is one third of the original passage. So here is a best tip here. The best tip is count every single word of the given passage and divide it by 3. For example, you will write a Précis of 40 words for a passage of 120 words. So let's imagine that you are given a passage of 120 words, and if you divide 120 by 3, you are going to get 40. So your Précis should be of exactly 40 words. Now while counting, you should not miss even the articles and the prepositions. You should count each and every single word that is given in the passage. Removing the irrelevant data, sentence or examples is as important as writing the relevant points. So while you are searching for the points, important points, just make sure that you remove the irrelevant examples or data or numbers if they are not directly related to the main idea of the passage. Thus, identify the superfluous data and facts and keep the core idea of the work only in the Précis. So, superfluous obviously means extra. So, if any extra information is given or if any redundant information is given, which means that if there is a repetition of a concept or an idea, you should just you should not include it in the Précis. You should only include one idea at a time. It is written in the past tense, so Précis is written in the past tense. So let's discuss the don'ts of Précis writing. A Précis writing is a formal way of writing a shorter form of the given paragraph. Therefore, do not form your own opinions. I think I have already elaborated this point. Not to give your own opinions, only give a summary of the opinions of the writer. Do not insert your own remarks and criticism in a Précis. So when you are writing a Précis, do not write your own ideas or criticism of the given passage. Only write a summary of the given passage. Always take the fact and data that is given in the paragraph only. So you should rely on the information given in the given passage, and you should not give your own facts and opinions. Do not insert a question. You should never ask a question in a Précis, because that is not your job. The only job that you have been given as a student is to give a brief summary of the given passage. Do not use contractions and abbreviations. Contractions such as writing don't instead of do not. So do not use that. Write the full form of a word, and do not give your own abbreviations. Write the full form of a word. Only write the full form of any given words. Do not start directly or bluntly. So there should always be an opening line of a Précis, and that opening line again should be relevant, should be related to the given passage. It should not be your own idea or own opinion. The best way is to start off your Précis with giving a summary of the main idea. This will show that you have not understood the passage properly and have started writing a Précis. So here is a solved exercise. I will read the passage, and you can pause this video and you can read the questions afterwards. So I will read the passage and I will only read the Précis that is given in the next slide. Read the following passage and answer the question given at the end. A life of action and danger moderates the dread of death. It not only gives us fortitude to bear pain, but teaches us at every step the precarious tenure on which we hold our present being. Sedentary and studious men are the most apprehensive on this score. Dr. Johnson was an instance in point. A few years seemed to him soon over, compared with those sweeping contemplations on time and infinity with which he had been used to pose himself. In the still life of a man of letters there was no obvious reason for a change. He might sit in an armchair and pour out cups of tea to all eternity, would it had been possible for him to do so. The most rational cure, after all, for the inordinate fear of death is to set a just value on life. If we mere wish to continue on the scene to indulge our headstrong humor and tormenting passions, we had better be gone at once. And if we only cherish a fondness for existence according to the good we desire from it, the pang we feel at parting, which it will not be very severe. So the Précis for the given passage in the previous slide has been done at the bottom of this slide. You can look at the length of this Précis and the length of the passage that is given in the previous paragraph. So you can very well compare the size of the Précis that has been done here. So let's read the Précis. If we lead an active life facing dangers, we will not fear death. People who lead a lazy and peaceful life are afraid of death. The most sensible way of getting rid of the fear of death is to value life properly. If we do not give unnecessary importance to our life, we will not feel the pangs of death. So you can see that a very reasonable length for Précis has been done here. And as I can see from a bird's eye view that it feels quite, the size of the Précis feels quite apt according to the length of the passage that has been given. So I hope that this lecture on comprehension and Précis writing has been clear to you. The resources for this lecture have been given at the end of this slide of this lecture. So you can consult those resources, you can open those links to find out further information regarding Précis writing. I hope that you will practice Précis writing on your own from your books, and stepwise practice exercises are given in your recommended books. So here are the sources for today's lecture. I hope that you have understood the points that I have tried to make you understand. So the lecture for today has formally ended. Take care. Allah Hafiz.